Hopefully you're doing well today. Um, so if you haven't seen the stream before, what we do is we generally go over VCDB incidents and turn them from kind of a unstructured text record into kind of structured breach data. And so what VCDB is it's Ferris Community Database, a database of, not really a database, a data set of structured breaches that have been collected for the last several years. The way it works is, and I'll switch this over. Let's see. We collect breaches that we are publicly disclosed as issues in this repository. So we can see the MoviePass one has been added recently. And then from there, we have a script that randomly assigns them to various people who then code them into a structured format using Varus. And Varus is just vc-risk/veris. And that's the structured schema we use. And so I've got a bunch of assignments here. There's a couple that need details that I noted last time. So I might start with the Dominion. It takes about 15 minutes, so hopefully in an hour we can get through, say, 4 of them. Maybe 5, depending on how we're feeling. But I'm sorry for being late, by the way. I was out yesterday selling a house that I've owned for several years, since, in fact, before I took the job on the DBR team. And today was driving over to the bank and depositing the check. That's not a check that I wanted to hold on to particularly long, since I'm not particularly well known for keeping track of such things. So we're getting that done. Let's take a look at the Dominion breach, and we'll see how it goes. So Dominion National Alerts, member of 9, yada, yada, yada. Dominion National Alerts, member of 9-year data breach. So the first thing we need to do is look at the links. There's a lawsuit involved. I have a bunch of other stuff, and we'll see what this was. Vision and dental insurer Dominion National is notifying an unknown number of members of a data breach incident that may have caused personal information to be exposed. Oh, that's a lot of not particularly useful information. April 24th, at least we know the date that it was disclosed. Or we have the date that they learned about it. And we know how long they've had access, so we now have a discovery time. And that's useful because a lot of times it isn't particularly clear, at least on public ones, because they tend to not like to talk about the details of how badly they've messed up. They just want to talk about the minimum to clarify to people that they may have been in a breach or may not have, that kind of thing. Health insurance cleared its servers, and I always like how they make sure to say this, that they've cleaned or cleared or responded or something, because they don't want you to think that they just found out about it and we're done. We'll just go and not do anything. There is no evidence of information being accessed or misused because we really didn't want to find any. Data stored on the computer servers included current and former member enrollment and demographic information, addresses, email addresses, yada, yada, yada. Dominion National began alerting members on June 21st. The health insurer has set up a response line. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of information there. We have a little bit about, we know that the asset, we know it was servers, we know the data that, this is the problem, is we know the data that the servers had on it. It is not clear whether the data was breached. Let's see. See, are there options other than answering questions here for this? Here. See. Personal data of roughly 95,000. So we have a number of compromised. New breach. has been compromised. So they say that it's been compromised, so we'll treat it that way. Believes the servers have been accessed by an unauthorized third party 9 years ago. Okay. So he's contacted the FBI. It includes current and former members, so we know who the data victim was. No evidence that was misused, and they've offered free credit monitoring. They're so useful. Well, let's go ahead and do this now. So GBS incident, security incident, yes. And we want to take the GitHub ID number so that we can trace backwards to it if need be. Let's see. And we're going to put all these links in here, comma, separated. So that it's helpful from our perspective that we'll be able to track back if need be, figure out where the information came from. Oh. And the other helpful thing is that if we have to deduplicate the data, the links can be used for deduplicating it. Oh, 2.9 million patients affected as well. Oh, a big whoopsie. Yeah, this stream includes lots and lots of sighing. That's, you know, part of what you get for what you pay. Summary. Did they tell us anywhere about what happened? So something explain. Breach due to unknown actions led to patient data disclosure. Something like that. Officials received an internal alert about unauthorized access and launched an investigation 9 years after it happened. Well, at least we know the discovery method now. That's a benefit. Okay. So confidence, medium. We don't, because we'll know some timeline information, but we don't really know any of the actual. We don't know about the actions, which is okay. Varus is set up in such a way that the actions don't have a huge impact, or you can skip portions of the schema. So if you record 100 things or 1,000 things, and a third of them are missing actions, and a third are missing actors, and a third are missing something else, you actually have you can still do analysis on the information that's left. So it's August 25th was the compromise, as early as August 25th, so that's the earliest time. Discovery happened years later. So let's see. It's August 22nd today. So August 25th, 2010, August 25th, 2011, 12, 13. So we will say this is a 9-year breach. Because like, what kind of alert comes in 9 years after? Has this person literally been accessing it for 9 years and just now generated some new alert? Like, how does that even work out? You know, like, okay. The notice did not explain what spurred the internal alert nor the first discovery. However, the notice was sent 60 days after the initial investigation concluded. It's important to note that under HIPAA, you're required to do that. 9 years before the investigation concluded on April 29th. So notification, let's say July. So we'll say, we'll put notifications July, July of 2019. Yeah, we don't really know the day, and it's not particularly important. And we don't know anything about compromise or exfiltration from a time perspective. containment. I'm gonna put at least weeks. It sounded like they went through and cleaned all the servers, and it's possible it was up to 2 months, but it sounds like they got cleaned up in more time than that. So the victim, this is the obvious stuff. And this is the nice thing about public breaches is you actually know details about the victim because you can just look it up. So Dominion National. And let's see. They have a Wikipedia page. The Wikipedia is actually kind of a nice place to look up companies because Dominion. I'll try the disambiguation. Film, places, games, businesses, and brands. Dominion network, motor, theater. Other uses. It's nice when it's on Wikipedia because they include some of the things that we normally need, like organization size. If not there, we'll try here. LinkedIn normally. Maybe Dominion National isn't the appropriate way to look it up. Dominion National has 140 companies. That seems really low. Let's see. Let's give it a look. 900,000 members offers 300,000 listing employee and staff of over 200. Wow. So 900,000 members. Wait. And they breached 2.3 million, which is like everyone that's had them for the last 2 years, or the last 10 years. Okay, employee count, they're actually much smaller than I guessed. Sounds like 100 to 1,000. Dominion National NICS code. Their health insurer. Code 524. We'll look that up at Far Smarter Bids, the unofficial partner for the DBIR. So they are an insurance 524. Let's suggest a 5242 insurance brokers and agencies. So 524210. Okay. Locations affected. It doesn't really give us a good sense for that. So we may just skip over that one because they don't really talk about how many servers were breached. So region is North America. And then what state are they headquartered in? They had a nice kind of who we are page. So say Arlington, Virginia. We can use we're using the 3166-2 codes for states and regions of countries. And they have them for other regions, but in this case we're using the US one. Secondary victims, no, there are no secondary victims. So action, I'm going to put purely unknown. Breach discovered. And then they keep saying the data. We don't know that they elevate, but they infiltrated and exfiltrated. Breach was discovered well after, and no actor actions were disclosed. Do we even know the actor, really? Go back and look. It says a third party, so we'll say it's an external actor. So, but we don't really know anything about him. In fact, we don't even know the motivation. It's unclear what the motive was or what they did. And So the actor's location was unknown. It says a little star by it, which means it's required. And so even though a lot of times we don't know the actor's location, unless they were local, we have to record it. Then if we don't know that, we don't know the region. So actor and the asset, total assets we don't know. We just know it was a server. So we're gonna put S unknown, server unknown. And we don't know the amount, they just say server. And then we really don't know anything else about it. What we do know is that data was breached. Total number of records went up to, let's see, what is this? Sure, I started with recent breaches occurred 9 years ago. That's what we got that. Company assesses systems, type of information lost. Probably got sued. They're updated and it's 2.9 million, 2.96 million. So let's see. The amount 2,960,000. And the variety was really, so the question is it medical data or personal data? What did it say? Addresses, date of birth, social security numbers, tax ID, bank details, ID, group, and subscriber numbers. That really falls into personal information. Medical information would be, medical diagnoses and things like that. So we're going to put personal information, but actually, we're going to put a couple. This is personal information. Well, we need to put bank information because personal information is implied in bank information, but they also have credit card numbers, social security numbers, bank details, addresses. Didn't have credit card numbers, so. And this is an important thing. So a lot of details or a lot of types of information contain another type. So bank information tends to contain personal information. Medical data tends to contain personal. And so if we have a more accurate description here, bank information, since tax IDs and bank details and such were disclosed, we're going to put bank, and then the personal information portion is implied. And it was of customers. State was clearly stored, but we don't know. We would assume unencrypted, but we really don't know. But if they had to make a disclosure, there's no signs of misuse. Credit monitoring for a year. Actually, this should be yes. This should eventually we need to turn this into a drop down rather than having it be free form. Did they say how many years? I think it was 1, but I just want to double check. Safeguards is providing 2 years. 2 years of free monitoring. And really, we don't know about the integrity or the availability or any of these other compromises wherever attribute went. We don't know about the rest of this information without having something about the action. Targeted, really unknown. Discovery method was internal alert, they said. Internal response, structure monitoring, IT review. They really don't say what kind of alert though, so we'll just put internal unknown. Not common to have a long breach like that be discovered internally. Normally when it's discovered internally, it's discovered relatively quickly. Indicated, found by an alert, but not by what type of alert. So a value chain is if you know a little bit about what the attack involved and would have required before and after the breach. And so if you know that it would have had to require software development, like ransomware as such, you can put it in here. Or if the attacker needed to do things like crack hashes or have a DNS fast flux service or other things. This lets us kind of capture what's happening before and after breaches and how much different breaches require other than the actions that are on target. But we don't always know them, and especially here where we know very little about what actually did happen on target, we're not going to know a lot about what happened after. So we'll close that. And then impact, overall rating. They're getting sued, so it's probably moderate hard costs because they're having to at least pay for lawyers to handle it, but it's not clear how much that'll actually cost them. And then plus the main thing is this was a random assignment. And so sometimes we mostly assign breaches randomly, but there are some that are priority things with like 1 million records breached, right? We wouldn't want that to necessarily not make it in to the report because it would confuse people as to why we're reporting on a certain number of records. Also, those samples out of the long tail of the distribution, so to speak, are important to pull in, and random sampling both that they were disclosed and then a random sample of whether you're going to select one is going to undersample them. But we do disclose when we're not putting something in the VCDB randomly, and that's been for the last year or two. And so if it's not random, it'll say priority or it'll say PHI DBR for if it was pulled in to try to collect healthcare data for our healthcare report, things like that. But randomly ones, and this is for any academic researcher who were to go in, they could go in and filter or otherwise normalize as they see fit for things that were not selected randomly. So the one thing we want to fill in is the event chain. We don't know the action. Actually, I'm gonna take that back. I'm not gonna fill in the event chain, and the reason is because we really don't know anything about the events that happened. And filling it in would imply that there was some knowledge there, and we don't want to add a spurious sample into our event chain data. So we'll just skip that, mark it validated, and save it. And so as I've done before, like, let's see, it's good to save the file off this way. And so we're going to put in a file here, and that is our first instance. This keeps it saved in such a way that if it gets lost in the web app, we have a record of it. And so give me 1 second here. I'm going to refill my tea, and I will be right back. Okay, we've got some water heating up, and it's time to close all these and go on to the next one. So here, I'll mark this one closed. I did get a PHI DBR, but it was randomly assigned, so that's okay. And we'll go back to my issues, and we'll see what we have left. Bear confirms, and by the way, to get to the issues, it's just from the VCDB repo. We're going to go to the issues list, and then the assignees. So Humana notifies 500 Texas members about a security breach. This one was assigned for being a PHI DBR breach. So we'll open up the link and we'll learn a little bit about it. Humana told 522 people the limited amount of personal data had been exposed during a security incident at the beginning of 19. Third parties who posed as physicians, provider groups gained access to a web portal. That's an interesting one. Of Humana's service provider, Availity. See, it's names like that that don't inspire confidence. Using personal information they already had, the third parties requested eligibility and benefit verification of health plan members. Humana added the breach affected a number of health insurers. Availity uncovered the incident during an internal review. Actually, there's a lot of information. Even just a couple of paragraphs here, we've got almost all the data we need to really fill this out. So do the basic stuff. Myself, confirmed, pull the GitHub number, and copy the reference in. Summary, actors posing as doctors downloaded healthcare information. Benefits verification status. So this is probably for health insurance fraud. So confidence, I'm pretty high about this one. Timeline, we don't really have a lot of data for where it started, right? It says the beginning of 2019, but we don't know if that's, you know, January, February, March. So rather than put something spurious in there, we'll just mark that. Discovery. Oh, nope, here we are. Breach occurred. Oh, that's wonderful. We actually have, wait. Began, personal data may have been exposed during a data incident at the beginning of 2019. The breach occurred from 2016 to 2018. But they did a review on, so, okay, this is not what I first read. So if it happened in 2016, 2015, we don't know how long compromise took. Exfiltration lasted for 2 years. Oh, the first known exfiltration, that's right. We really don't know about exfiltration. Discovery, though, didn't happen until January, so 3 years later. We need some really long ones in here. Containment. Did they explain anywhere where how long it took them to do something about it? Not really. Tell them in April, so it probably took them a bit of time. But again, not a lot of timeline information. So victim ID is Humana. Come up and figure out their NICS code and their size. Is this from their Wikipedia page or is this from someone else? 51,000 employees, slightly bigger than the last company. So it'd be 1,000, 10,000 to 50,000, or to 10,000 to 25,000. And then NICS code, 524114. Direct health and medical insurance carriers. I wonder if the other one should be direct health insurance. It was probably. We may go back and change the other breach to health insurance after this one. Locations affected. It sounds like one, it was just this server. And then region, clearly North America. Mark the United States in the country. Here, just skip to United States. There we go. And then what state is Humana located in? Louisville, Kentucky. So secondary amount. Yeah, and really, so technically, Humana really wasn't it's getting reported against Humana, but it was Availity that got breached, and Humana was really the secondary victim. So you know what I might do is, instead of coding this, put Humana down here as a secondary victim, and really Availity as the actual company, since that's what they say. Availity is out of Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm going to guess they're a much smaller company. So need to figure out what they work for or how big their company is. Availity. Uh, 500 to 1,000 employees is the estimate. That's still a lot. They got 800 online, so it wouldn't surprise me actually if they have more than 1,000. Since this is a pretty, and that's an important break point, because the break between 1,000 before above or below is where we draw the line between small and large. If it has 800 employees online that have them explicitly tagged, more than likely they actually are higher than that, just because the numbers are so low in LinkedIn a lot of times. So then we need to know their NICS code. It really kind of depends what they do. They listed as a administrative and management. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Consulting service. And I've talked about on stream before, but one of the things that is kind of important is a lot of times the traditional structured data for industries doesn't include technology because technology really isn't its own industry. You know, from a traditional standpoint, it doesn't fit alongside the traditional things. So the traditional things are things like manufacturing, services, retail, transportation, utilities, things like that. And technology can be any one of those. Like it could be a company that manufactures switches, or a company that provides, you know, online services. And so technology companies generally get lumped into whichever of those they do, and it's just they do it with technology of whatever type. And so you'll never see really a technology category in things that use structured industry classifications. So we're going to code them that way and mark Humana as the secondary victim. Avality. Yeah, being a terrible speller, I'd probably do better if I just tried to spell it correctly, and I would just spell it that way. So action. Do we know what actually happened here? Yes. So how would this work? I'm going to say this is a good one. This would be an actually interesting one, and this would be a good one for us to review in kind of our weekly reviews, because it's a type of impersonation, really. And so you can mark this as a use of stolen credentials, but is it really, you know, a type of pretexting? It's not really dialogue. It's impersonation. Citation, I mean, it's not really social in nature. And social needs to have an actor of a person. There was no real actor of a person. So let's see. They really, because they misused authentication. And so it wasn't a login and password, right? But they authenticated with personal data, it looks like, using personal information, this system. So it's really going to be use of credentials through some web application. And then that was to infiltrate and exfiltrate. The credentials, personal information of physicians. So that's what they said. Groups gain access to web portal, certain availability using personal information they already had of legitimate users. Okay. And then the actors were external. I would tend to say organized crime because this is a pretty structured attack. They used personal information to log into this portal. They're most certainly going to need to use it for financial means because that's what you use like membership IDs and benefits and such for. I like how there's no indication, no information indicates that the data was misused. Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of tempted to put unknown because even though this follows a pretty strict pattern, like this is a kind of a weird one, and it is possible to use this for espionage. I'm going to mark this as external unknown, the motive unknown, because there is kind of a potential espionage or other motive involved. Clearly, it was someone that had some intent and some plan, and it almost does feel. So we're going to get down to the discovery method. Is this targeted? It may be targeted because these people had personal information, or it may be non-targeted. Targeted. It might be not targeted because this was just the information that this personal information was just bought online on some malicious marketplace, and so that's what they had access to, or maybe just credential stuffing worked. Let's see, we don't know the region, so we know an external actor, but we don't know a whole lot. Assets, some web app. We'll say one web app because that's one total asset. We don't know a lot about the rest of it, right? See, this is the problem. We get asked a lot about cloud. Was this a cloud service or a cloud server? And the reality is a lot of times we don't know because it didn't play into it. Whether this web app was hosted in some cloud service or hosted on a local system, it wasn't the hosting that really had any impact either way on whether the breach occurred. It was the fact that the credentials were not enough to authenticate the person. And that really is agnostic of whether it was related to a cloud system or not. So that attribute confidentiality was data disclosed. Yes. Total amount 522. 522, and it was a lot of this was medical data. Customers, state, stored, data abuse. They said no, but they said they don't have any indication. So I'm not sure that how much I agree with them in that. Let's see. Let's go and integrity or availability. They really didn't change the integrity of the system. They didn't change the availability. So I think that let's see. Here, 1 second. Sorry. Yeah, ping. It's like, 1 second, I'll answer after I'm streaming, and they're like, yeah, I know this conference I'm talking about is streaming. It'll be online. It'll be online. We can watch it then. It's like, wait. That's not what I meant. Okay. So the actions here. Subsource. This was a PHI DVR assignment. The actions. Was a hacking action by an external actor compromising a server, leading to loss of confidentiality. And really just one. I mean, that's how easy it is. And so that is kind of a really common thing that happens is, it just ends up being one thing. The attacker logged in, got the data, and logged out, even if it happened over 2 years. And that's really surprising because a lot of people, when we think about breaches, we think about the attacker having, done something fancy to get access, broken in through the Wi-Fi or, found a vulnerability on a, say, a development server that hadn't been patched, and then pivoting into the inside organization and finding their way around, getting to domain admin, taking over the whole network. And while that does happen a small amount, the majority are this kind of thing. The attacker wanted something probably for financial gain, though it's not completely clear here, and they wanted to get in, get out. The other side of it is even when it is like an espionage attack, they use the same methods. And so espionage attackers will do things like will fish their targets first, right? And then once they're in, they take a lot longer. They spend more time looking around trying to find what they want. But even that first step is normally the case. And so if you're the type of person that's trying to defend your network, it makes a lot of sense to look for things like errors that just expose data, because errors cause a lot of breaches. And then look at phishing and credentials as the two big areas where attackers get in. And then, it makes sense to look to make sure you don't have anything internet facing with obvious vulnerabilities, because there are people scanning the internet to look for every single vulnerability out there. But really, it's like trying to patch that thing that came out a month or a year ago. That obvious thing to patch. It's not trying to be perfect. And it's certainly not spending a bunch of money to patch some 20-year-old obscure service internally that the attackers will never see, because they're more than likely just going to phish someone, get their personal information, log into the portal, and download everything they need. So with that, value chain for this, we don't know about. There's no development, but there was some targeting involved. Targeting involved, let's see, personal information. So they require that, and then from a cache out perspective, we don't know how they'll do it. There's no indication that they used fraud of any type, this is what I would expect, but there's no information about that yet. And so we'll close down that. And impact, insignificant. They did an investigation and notified some people, and that was about it. So with that, mark this one as validated. And we say validated because the script, the web app, validates the schema or the JSON against the schema, so that we know that if it doesn't throw any errors here, we've filled out a full schema. And so come over, create a new file, and just drop it here, just so we have 2 copies, because there's nothing more frustrating than like doing 10 VCDB cases in a row and then not getting them saved out, and then you come back or you try to save it out and something goes wrong and you've lost like 2 hours of work. So okay, and then we can close this one. So let's go back and we'll look at our case log again. Bear confirmed it's investigating a cyber attack by WinTI. Do that. I also kind of want to do an older one, but these are 22. They're not that old. Let's look at the Bear one. And investigating a cyber attack doesn't necessarily tell us that something happened. Bear has suffered a corporate network infection of an unknown period of time. Okay, the computer traced signs to WinTI presence in a notorious Chinese hacking gate. Bear AG, the Leverkusen-based pharmaceutical. And this may be the last one we do. I've got a meeting at 11, so we may only make it through 3. Giant has employed over 100,000 people. Yeah, so hey, we know the size of the company. Confirmed investigating an infection on their systems. Linked to another article, which they managed to eradicate at the end of last month. The company's first signs are positive. There's no evidence of data theft. The damage is still under assessment, so they can have no definitive deduction yet. It's hard to believe that you had an international threat group that compromised your system with a Trojan, and they didn't bother to take anything. I don't know. That's more you may have missed something than nothing happened. And then we have some information on the group. Many claim the group is supported by yada yada yada. Right now, the investigation is still ongoing. Does it say anything about what actually happened? Third party personal data was also not compromised. Some malware to use the system, access the systems remotely, and then pursue further exploits. So this is a much more advanced attack, but there's no details about what actually happened. Or, excuse me, or how they got in. Discovery provides clear evidence of complex and sophisticated malware because no wereoutware is ever simple. You know, I would just like to grep for news articles with simple malware versus complex and, fancy and innovative or sophisticated, whatever they want to say. The worst part of this is all about the the malware, which is, it's helpful to have actor information, but I'd really like to know what they actually did. Globe, blah blah blah. Data networks of sensors, groups across the globe are expanding. That's not helpful information. That's another thing. Like doing these, you get to like a healthy weariness for news articles about breaches. Because there's always like the angle to make it interesting, and that's what gets focused on, and then none of the actual useful information. So it's the number of records breached is the big thing, and whose information they maybe find someone whose data was breached, and have get a quote from them saying how their trust is lost, or we know who the threat was, and so let's talk a lot about nation state threat N+1. Probably comes from a Chinese group of mercenaries who carry out attacks, campaigns on the internet for money. I don't know how you say that with a straight face. Okay. Well, we should do this. Third one in a row of no useful actions. Advanced threat compromises big company. Helpful. Okay. What do we know? It did happen, so there is that. We'll put in the companies, the links that we looked at. Oh, I put the summary in the wrong place. This is not a great summary, by the way. I'm just not enthused about having to code this one. Yeah, I'm going to put low confidence. Not that it really matters, but okay. Set up by Bear in 2015. Type attack points toward spokesman added, citing their internal team. Because that's who you want to do your attribution is your internal security team. Okay, so does it say when this happened? Now, so the first signs of infection were detected by 18 as early as January 18. Oh, 2018, January, and we don't really know anymore. We don't know how long it took to do anything because they didn't find it until, months later. And if this was published in April, say maybe 14 months. And so they are investigating. Let's see. So this was disclosed. Let's assume they disclosed in April, and so discovery happened. Let's assume discovery happened in April, from January of 18 to April of 19. So 15 months, give or take. It doesn't even sound like there's no real containment or notification information. We could put notification as April. Victim ID, Bear. And Bear is actually, let's see, Bear, not in a U.S. company, I think. They are German, right? And out of headquartered in Leverkusen, Germany. I don't know what state that is in. Let's go look at their Wikipedia page and see how many people they employ. It has to be a lot. 110,000. So I think ours caps out at 100,000 plus. So we'll do that. Let's just be 100,000 or over. 100,001 or over. Nix code. I don't know why they never put this on the Wikipedia page. But it'll be obvious one. Non-commercial research organizations. Research and development for social sciences and humanities. Really? Okay. Locations affected. I don't think we know. It sounds, with a threat like that, we kind of... it's going to be a little bit different. Germany is DE, isn't it? Yeah. Region... It'll be Western Europe. Then state. So we should look up. I'm curious. I want to look up what the state that they're located in is. So where did they say they were headquartered? Headquarters. And I was saying state North Rhine Westphalia. So we're going to open these. It always makes sense to open them with a right click. They're supposed to open a new window, but there are some that do not. So it's good to do that. DE is not the right way to search for this. So 16. We're looking for North Rhine. So their code is CDU. I thought these were all 2 digits. NW maybe. Yeah. So NW. And secondary victims, not really. So we'll go in and we will try victim actions. This is where we really don't know. This was a advanced threat. Actor discovered, but actions not disclosed, at least in this article. It's possible that you could dig around and find more. Something like this, could have potentially be talked about at a conference or something. They certainly infiltrated. I'm going to mark this for all of them. The chance that any of those didn't happen is astonishingly slim. But we do know the actor. The actor is external, state affiliated. They indicate, well, we don't know the specific, we would assume espionage, given what we know otherwise, but, they also say that this group works for money, but they were probably tasked to do something. Started out targeting gaming companies, updated the malware and launched attacks on a broader scale. The first day hit a pharmaceutical organization. Bear announced that the first science espionage is supported by the nation state, possibly group. The value of VigParnet data is particularly high as there's no global information sharing in a world where we choose patent genomes instead of collaborating to speed up. That's a little subjective there. The sample of unclear data was analyzed and revealed that it used a science certificate involving the research of development of medical drugs. So it sounds, I'm going to say that this was espionage. It's probably corporate espionage, and that they were looking for secrets. But even though it doesn't say what data was taken. But it would make more sense than they were looking to just cash out. And so the country is China, so CN. We don't know, I don't know the region, but I do know the name. Win NTI for whatever reason. We'll close that one. Assets. Malware. So we know it was probably servers and desktops. We'll assume. Let's see. What do we know about the malware? They talked about it here somewhere, right? Or is WinNTI the name of the malware? Come on. WinNTI attack on computer and German technology group. You know, this is the kind of stuff that's going to get me in trouble, is Googling WinNTI and malware. So apparently I'm not the only person that does that. Okay, so if it's Linux malware, which would be my guess, we would kind of assume that this is server stuff. So Linux version. So I'm going to mark at least servers, though it's unknown what the servers were doing. We don't know the number. We would also probably, like, I wouldn't be surprised if there were desktops, but we really don't have any information about that. Country, again, this is the country of the asset, and we don't know the country of the asset, so I cancel that out. Cloud, we don't really know. Total amount, we don't know. Attribute, and this is one where the bear doesn't say, right? We know who they employ and what they earn. They just know this link group traces suffered corporate network infection of an unknown period of time. Unknown period of time. How do they know if it's unknown? They know the earliest it was found. They think it may go back farther. That's why. But they really don't say what they lost. And so, unknown. The threat actor is known for targeting... I can't spell pharmaceutical. I know that is not my skill set. What did it say over here? Let's see if I can bypass this whole embarrassing experience by copy and pasting. Lab. That is so not how you spell that word. There we go. Right on the second try. Result. Unknown. Known for targeting pharmaceutical companies. But no information disclosed. We know that the integrity was compromised because the malware was installed. Really, we should go up here for action. Do the same thing. Action, malware. Route access, ransomware. It's backdoor C2 control. We kind of implies both. Actually, it's really more backdoor. Backdoor is more like accessed directly. It's kind of a portal for manual access. Command and control is normally for like automated bot type stuff. Vector, they don't disclose. The name is WinNTI. So there we go. Attribute. Targeted, this sounds very targeted. Discovery method. Did they say how they discovered it? They always like to, a lot of times if they discovered it through an internal way, they like to at least say, well, at least we found it ourselves. First signs are positive, there's no evidence of data theft, but good luck with that. How did they discover it? First, Japanese holding group involved, research. So ongoing. All being part of a China orchestrated espionage. Is there a surge of attacks on smaller and high? So if we're going to do that, yeah, I mean, we marked motive espionage. Niche companies in Germany who can't afford large IT teams. Yeah, because you'd think Bayer might be able to afford a large IT team. Big Pharma. German company transfer. Nope, doesn't say there. German has contained a cyber attack. Bayer found the software on its computer network earlier this year, covering, monitored, and analyzed it until the end of last month. Saying that you covertly analyze the malware does not make it any more doesn't make it sound like any better. You still had malware for a couple of years without detecting it. But internal and discovered malware sounds a lot like antivirus, right? Like the malware got picked up and finally cleaned up by antivirus, and then they covertly monitored and analyzed it until the end of last month. Okay. So discovery was internal. Really was antivirus probably. Value chain. And so clearly there was some malware development. Not a bot. We don't know about exploits, payload, ransomware, Trojan. That's another program. Not really. They didn't fill them. So we'll go with a payload. It provides access. Probably did other things. Probably a list here of what it does somewhere. Used for control. Actually, it was more command and control from the look of it. So we'll go and change that from an action perspective, malware, and command and control as well. And that's pretty common for those two to get marked together. That's probably what it does. So targeting, they probably know the targeting. Let's see. Let's see. Distribution services, it's not clear. There's probably no cash out or money laundering. There's certainly some payload development involved. Impact, that's not really discussed, so we won't put anything in there. Plus, and again, the event chain really starts with unknown actions from an external actor. Really, we don't know what the asset targeted was. And then we don't know how they compromised it from the beginning. So there's kind of this first unknown section. And then we know that somewhere in the middle, malware was used by the external actor to compromise the integrity of servers. And then there's at least another further unknown actions as they access these systems and did whatever. Malware's installed. Okay. And when we go and we analyze event chains, when we have unknown actions, a lot of times we actually filter them out of the event chain data, because most of the time when we say unknown, we don't know if that was one unknown action or multiple. So this first one could be a single use of credentials to log in, or it could be a phishing that led to something else, or it could be an advanced exploit that and took multiple steps. And so each one of these unknowns could be multiple steps. And so when it comes time to analyze event chains, things with unknown actions will get filtered out. And so finally, the rest of this we don't really know, and we'll validate it, and it validates, so we're going to save it. And I am now past time to get on to my next meeting. So thank you everyone for coming, and I will see you later.